Ladies and gentlemen, get ready to embark on a journey like no other. Welcome to the Glum Lot Podcast,
your go-to destination for a unique blend of recovery and discovery.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Mark. And in this podcast, we will endeavor to create a safe and uplifting space for our guests and listeners to share their stories with sincerity and a touch of humor.
Remember, we are not a Glum Lot. The Glum Lot Podcast is more than just a source of entertainment. It's a beacon of hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, recovery is possible. Every story we share carries the power to inspire positive change.
So buckle up, get ready to listen, and join us in discovering the strength that lies within every individual's journey. This is the Glum Lot Podcast, where humor meets hope. Okay, Brett, we are on episode 90 of the Glum Lot Podcast.
Wow, Count.
Yes,
All right.
yes. If I'm Count anything, I'm Count Chocula.
Ooh, that was good stuff.
Yeah, right?
Man,
Blueberry and Frankenberry.
Yeah.
I was always a blueberry guy.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I was just talking about, suggested to somebody to have blueberry coffee because that's amazing.
I had blueberry coffee today.
Did you really?
Yeah, I love it.
Ah.
And then when I first saw it, I'm like, blueberry and coffee? Who the fuck thought of that?
Was it Keurig?
It was.
Green Mountain, yeah.
Yeah, it was Green Mountain.
Yeah, that's the one
Good
I
stuff.
experienced
Good
first,
stuff.
too. Wow, here we are talking about coffee.
Well, we are alcoholics, and we do drink a lot of
coffee. We do drink a lot of it, don't we?
Yeah.
Although not quite that variety.
In fact, I remember when I didn't know what AA was, a friend of mine's dad used to go to AA, and I asked him one day, I'm like, well, what is this AA meeting stuff? I go, what do they do? He goes, they sit around, drink coffee, and talk about drinking. I'm like, oh,
yeah, kind of.
Okay. Well, that's kind of what we do, I guess, in a very general
And
way.
boy, if you don't have that coffee ready, let me tell you, I've
people
experienced
are
this.
pissed when the coffee maker drops the ball.
Yep.
Yeesh.
And I won't share what I told them, but it was rather pointed. But anyways.
So, Glumlot Podcast T, I want to remind everybody to please email us your thoughts or guest suggestions or whatever at the glumlotpodcast@gmail.com and join our Facebook group, the Glumlot Podcast.
It's all right. We'll keep going. The Glum Lot Podcast on Facebook.
Okay, anyways.
Perfect.
What's on your mind today?
What's on my mind today? This is a good one. Anyways, my mind today is on, am I fueled by willpower or higher power? I'm just curious. I think in the beginning I was very fueled on willpower, and that did not serve me very well. I always thought
probably
I could fix
no
things.
human power could have relieved our alcoholism.
Yeah, especially some dude named Will.
Right.
I mean, Will failed me, and willpower definitely failed me.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until, a few months in, after going through some of the steps, listening to people in the room, that it was, you're not going to do this by yourself. You need to consider a higher power. And that meant many things to many people, but regardless of what it meant, it's something I had to adopt.
Yeah.
And as soon as I did is when I started seeing results.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if we could have got sober on our willpower, we would have done it.
Yeah.
Oh,
we knew we were.
We tried and tried.
Yeah.
We tried everything, changing things up and, changing brands and liquors and locations and whatever. And nothing worked because we were powerless.
Correct.
And I like to say we are powerless, but we are not helpless.
No.
So some of that willpower you have to take back in the form of getting your ass to meetings and doing the work that is necessary. You have to will yourself to do that. Nobody's going to do it for you.
100%, because it's not easy either.
So I'm powerless, but I'm not helpless. And
Correct.
because of that, I'm able to work the steps and take advantage of the program and the fellowship and become a sober person.
Yeah.
One day at a time.
Yeah. Agreed. So quickie, it was a good talk about the blueberry coffee and stuff too. So
yeah. Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you haven't tried it, hey, you know what else? And I think coconut.
Oh, yes.
Coconut and coffee is fantastic.
Yep. We just had a syrup for that, so I did enjoy that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna start with something a little different than the norm, Mark.
What do you got in mind?
I'm really excited. I had a brilliant idea.
Of course, most of your ideas are brilliant.
Let me tell you. And I was sitting here thinking, there's a couple guys in here. One of them the audience is familiar with. He's already shared his story, and it was one of my I got a few favorites, I'm not going to lie.
Would that be one of the three Mike R's?
Yes, I'll let them decide which one it is when you hear them. But I know that there is a great partnership going on right now and that is with his sponsee. And his
Yes.
sponsee has been very forthright and honest in his journey thus far. And so far doing a great job, going through the struggles, going through, just about everything,
Right.
but still sticking around and still doing a great job.
It's that time-honored one alcoholic to another
That's right.
relationship that makes the program work.
Yeah, and so that's what we're going to do today, ladies
Yes.
and gentlemen, and whoever else you are.
Yes.
We are going to have the maybe a little bit of the story about the beginnings of sobriety, and then we're going to talk about how the sponsor and sponsee work well together, hopefully.
Good. Who are these people?
Okay, so we have Mike and Jake.
All right, let's welcome Mike and Jake. Welcome, Mike and Jake, to the Glum Lot Podcast. And Jake, we'd like to start off with your sobriety date.
My sobriety date is November 29th, 2024.
Okay. So you've got 4 months as of
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
congratulations.
Thank you.
And Mike, of course, has been a guest on our show, Long-Term Sobriety. And so if you could, each in your own words, tell us about what got you guys together, and let's hear from the sponsee first.
Yes, all the
He
details.
is the sponsee.
Yes.
It's funny. So Mike and I met. I was probably about 2 weeks into sobriety. I had sort of stumbled into some different meetings, and
Did you go to rehab first or no?
no, I did not.
Okay.
Straight to here.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right, nice. Me
Yes,
too. Okay.
I'd gotten connected with somebody through a family member who was around me, and they told me to go to this one meeting. I went to it. I met a guy at that meeting who brought me to a second meeting. I ended up asking him to be my sponsor at the second meeting.
Ah.
I was kind of pushed into it, but
Yeah, sure.
I had been told by my family and people that I knew in the program that getting a sponsor was super important.
Yeah.
And so I just went ahead and asked somebody to be my sponsor. That was a little rocky for the first 2 weeks. It didn't feel like a really good fit,
It's definitely uncomfortable having somebody tell us what we should be doing and all this stuff, right? It's just,
Exactly.
I remember that.
Exactly. And I didn't know whether that was something that I should just expect. Is this what a relationship with a sponsor should be like? And ultimately, it ended up not being that good of a fit, and I decided of my own accord to start going to some different meetings than he was telling me I should go to. And at one of those first meetings, I was sitting at a table by myself about 10 minutes before the meeting, just hanging out, super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And this guy just walks over to me from the table next to me and says, "Hey, why don't you come over and sit with us?" And I was, so relieved at this huge,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, right.
Hate being by myself, kid at
Everybody's
the lunch
staring at
table,
you. Yeah, right.
all by yourself.
Why don't you come and sit with the cool kids?
Exactly. And so that's what happened. We got to chatting afterwards, and it ended up he started suggesting some other meetings that were closer to me, places I hadn't been before, and he told me to go to this one on Tuesday night, and it's one that all four of us go to actually, and I didn't go to that meeting. I didn't.
I remember this because he sat in the corner, facing the corner, weeping.
Yeah.
I mean, just weeping.
He brought it up as a topic.
Yeah. We had to dig it out of
Topic
him.
is rejection from the newcomer. Well, let's stop for a second and just talk about what happened here, because I think it's important for people to know that the whole sponsor-sponsee relationship is not. It's not. You're not on the hook for the rest of your life.
Right.
Exactly.
And some people change sponsors after months, years, whatever it's going to take, for various reasons.
Right.
One thing you do not want to change sponsors for is because they're telling you the truth.
Yes.
Sometimes you're here and you're new and you hear the truth from a sponsor and you're like, that guy's kind of an asshole. So you think about that. But the other thing is there has to be a personal chemistry, because it's really about trust, honesty, and you're going to talk to this person about things you may never talk to another person about.
That's
So
right.
that trust factor is huge. And you've got to find a person, or they've got to find you, who you feel a connection with, that you're going to tell them something and they're going to get it, and non-judgmentally, because that's what sponsors are supposed to do. We're supposed to hear your issues non-judgmentally, and then maybe sponsors are just guides. We are not here to judge.
Yeah, Sherpas.
My sponsor never judged me. But he would point me in the right direction. He would call me sometimes on some kind of shit I was kind of fabricating.
Yeah.
Which,
And I wonder how they know
which
that.
he pointed out in a very nice way.
Yeah.
So, anyways, all these little factors come into play. But if I know that some people at meetings can be a little aggressive to a newcomer.
Yes.
And say, until you find a sponsor, I'm going to be your sponsor. Call me every day. And you're like,
and then-
what the fuck?
Yeah, I met this guy once, and here I am having to meet him already, right? Just
Right. I remember a guy early on with me saying that, if I needed somebody to work with, I could work with him. But one thing he had is I have to call him every day between 12 and 1.
oh my god,
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, I don't like the way this is starting already.
no way.
And
And-
that's exactly the kind of feeling
The
that I
vibe.
got.
It creates a dependent person that was already dependent on something.
Exactly. And the red flag that I had was that I had mentioned I had gone to a meeting nearby me without him. And afterwards I had mentioned, oh, man, I really liked that meeting. I'd love to go to that meeting again. And he said, no.
Okay.
Okay.
Right then.
And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
He's like, no, you're going to come to these meetings with me. And I just kind of, all I'd been told was listen to your sponsor. Yeah. So I did. But I also was listening to my gut. And
That's important.
yeah, and by listening to my gut is how I met Mike.
Okay.
And ultimately, he told me to go to that Tuesday night meeting. Turns out, I go to a different meeting, and guess who's there? Mike.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
he knew.
He knew I was good.
Yeah, I don't know. Now, you're not far enough in yet. After you go through the steps, we talk to you about how to put the tracker in. It's usually a pat on the back that actually drives it through your epidermis.
Right.
And we get the tracker, and then we know what meetings you're going to. And,
Yes, that's right.
the mind control doesn't really start till later. But it's all good, brother. It's all good,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And instead of a tracker, I did think of it more as a bit of a sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A sign from the universe. Maybe
yeah.
we're supposed to be at this meeting together.
Yeah.
So, there is a certain attraction, not, sexual, obviously, but there is an attraction to somebody for what they have. When
Of
you come in,
course.
and you hear somebody speak, and you're attracted to their message. They have a message of like healing and peace and the stuff you're supposed to be looking for in AA. And you hear that, and you're like, man, I'd like to talk to that guy more. Maybe not be a sponsor, but I'd like to get to know that guy.
Yeah.
I like what he says. And that's usually the way it starts. Now, with me, oddly enough, I met my sponsor before I even walked into my first meeting. But he was very kind to me, and he took me aside after, gave me a big book, blah, blah, blah. And it was like a natural fit. I was blessed. But I know a lot of people don't have that, So getting on with your story, so you get to know Mike, and you go to this other meeting, and there he is, and you're like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
You like his message.
Yeah,
You
I
like his personality, his way.
I
right?
did, and I was, searching to get out of the previous sponsorship, and I had gotten the guidance from my family member who was in the program, and he said, whatever you do, don't leave this sponsor until you get a new one. Okay. And so after that second meeting with Mike, turns out all I need is 2 dates, and then I asked somebody to be my sponsor.
That's exactly what it is, right? Kind of what it is.
I didn't want to sound desperate, but
But I very kindly asked him to be my temporary sponsor.
Okay,
it's
yeah.
always a good end.
And so this is still temporary. He's still
Test driving.
Yes, I'm still test driving. I'm not really sure about it. I mean, I think it's good enough. Somehow we got on this podcast, but
Right.
You signed the lease, dude, so you're in.
Right. So is this right, what you're hearing, Mike?
It is. And what I want to say about that first night that we met at that meeting, it took me, here I've been in the program a long time, and he sat at that table, and I pondered, should I go over? I finally got up and went over. stuck
Right.
my hand out, gave him my name, and said, "Come on, sit with us." But one thing I did tell him at that meeting, because he had conveyed, and I could see that he was wound up. He was, oh my God, he was all wound up with his sponsor that he had at the time and what have you. And one of the things that I told him, and I don't know where it came from, but I told him we have to have fun in recovery.
Yes.
And with
You
that,
say that message a lot. Yeah.
Super
with
important.
that, well, you know what? I learned it that night that I said it to you because I watched the peace and the release,
Yeah.
the pressure got off his shoulders right there when I said that.
Yeah. We are not a glum lot.
We are not a
See what
glum
you
lot.
did there.
And that's one of the things, and he was clearly not having fun at this recovery thing with the sponsor that had him all pressured up and what have you.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be too forceful either.
Well, right.
You know, to just explain that there's a different way, there's other meetings. And yes, I did tell him my usual Tuesday night meeting, of which that week I did not go because there was an anniversary meeting. And lo and behold, I went to that anniversary meeting, which I never go to. And lo and behold, who walks in?
Man, just imagine if you had told him to go to that meeting, you weren't there, and he did show up to that one.
I know.
I'll tell you.
I know. You
But-
guys would have had to rescue him.
Yeah.
You know what you say, what happened that meeting is very important for two reasons. One, because reaching out to a newcomer is always good. You know, and even if you just say, "Hey, how you doing? My name is blah blah blah." I've done that a million times.
Right.
It's always good because I've been there.
Huge.
You know,
Exactly.
and the other thing is that you're talking about that although recovery is deadly serious, if it's a bummer, no one's coming back.
No.
Man, nobody wants to be preached at and put down, and that's not.
And controlled.
Yeah, it does not work that
Controlled.
way.
Right.
So there's got to be a spark in there that makes them think about, I can't wait to go to my next meeting.
Yeah, I want to belong to this.
And want to come back. So
Right.
important.
And that, you know, after decades of going to meetings, that's still true for me. I still get that spark out of a meeting. I love them. They're fun.
absolutely.
I laugh my ass off half the time.
God, we had a
There's
riot.
profound things said. I get
yeah.
spiritual fulfillment. I can't say enough about it. So that's good.
I will say just to give a little bit of balance. I give a lot of credit to my first sponsor. He wasn't the right fit for me.
Oh, sure.
You know, and mostly because his personality was for more pressure, a little bit more oversight. I mean, you can think about it more of like the helicopter parent, right? Versus somebody who's a little bit more laissez-faire about things. And what I needed at that time in those first couple days was somebody who was going to tell me, you're coming to this meeting with me tomorrow. And once I had gotten those, jitters out after those first 2 weeks, I didn't need that anymore.
Right.
I didn't need.
And some people do.
Yeah, and some
You
people
know,
do.
Some people need that for a little bit.
Exactly. Some people do need that. But what I needed was something more fun.
Yeah.
I needed something I wanted to come to because I really wanted to be there. That sense that I felt when I went to that meeting that I was told I should not go back to was like, the sense I wanted to continue to have.
It sounds to me like your higher power provided exactly what you needed, exactly when you needed it.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
And we
See how that
talked
shit
about
works?
It just does.
See how that works?
that. We have talked about that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I had to have it before I even walked in.
So let's chat about that a little bit at first. What was that like? We're talking about the HP word there, and I know that was kind of a struggle with you at first
Yeah.
coming in, and how'd that follow through.
Yeah,
Whatever.
that's a big part of my story.
Yeah.
I have been an atheist since I was probably 13 years old, and it had been a big part of my identity. I used to be one of those obnoxious atheists in high school who wanted to prove to everyone that, God doesn't exist and, you're stupid for thinking that. And obviously, as I matured, my thinking matured.
But when you first come in the rooms, you're hearing those words, God
Exactly.
and higher power. Now you got a sponsor that probably is
All
starting
the
to
time.
allude to it,
I
right?
had
Yeah.
an alcoholic say to me yesterday, that's got a few months in, I don't really subscribe to that. I'm a man of science. I said, I am too.
Yeah,
But
me too.
there's a nexus there.
They're not mutually exclusive, right?
Exactly.
And that's taken me some time to
Sure.
get used to. It is the number one reason why I didn't step in the room for the first time.
Yeah.
I knew the program.
Oh, so you did have some knowledge of it.
Yeah, I mean, to be totally fair, I did go to a couple meetings when I was about 18 years old,
Yeah.
just to prove to a girlfriend that I had cheated on, that I was, making better decisions, and
Yes,
the
of
only
course.
reason I cheated was because
'Cause
I
you were
drank
drunk.
alcohol,
Yeah.
and so that lasted about 2 or 3 meetings, and my sister, and my brother-in-law have been in the program for the last 20 plus years, and so I'm very familiar with it to some extent.
Yeah.
And the whole God thing really did push me away.
Yeah.
I didn't think that I would be accepted, and I didn't think that it was the right thing for me. But God of your understanding, that piece of it is super important, and that's something that Mike and I have worked on a lot. And he has opened my mind, and he's opened my heart, and allowed me to be more open-minded about what that means to me. I'm still not 100% sure, but I have the willingness right now, which is so relieving.
Yeah, right. Right.
That's, and that is true. And that's supposed to be the way it is, actually, because we don't work the steps. We don't hit them once and we're done. We work them for the rest of our lives. So when you take that third step, you take it however you can take it, as much as you can take it. If it's a freaking millimeter, it's a millimeter. And as you go through sobriety, you work on those things. And you witness more things probably in your own life, and then with other people and in meetings. And you start to see that there's something there, and undefinable, for me, undefinable. I'm not a Christian. The word God, I still don't like it. I like universe. I like higher power. It's a little more open. And I was raised Catholic, and I know Mike's Catholic. There are a lot of things about it I didn't like, and sometimes my kids are going through some Catholic school stuff or whatever. I go to those things and I see the value in those things. There's a lot of it I don't agree with, a lot of the dogma,
Right.
and the ritual and stuff like that. But there's a lot of truth there.
Right.
Sure.
No matter if you're Catholic or even atheist, there's still a lot of human truth there. So this contempt before investigation that a lot of us have when we come into the rooms. My sponsor, one of the first things he said to me was, "How are you with the God thing?"
Yep.
And I was like, "I don't know. I mean, what do you mean?" And that is an adjustment for a lot of people, and it is taken in baby steps.
And I do think that the baby steps, the millimeter thing, to me, when I first heard that actually scared me a little bit more, because what it felt like to me was like, oh, yeah, you can be an atheist for right now,
You're right. Right.
but eventually
change.
you'll come to
change.
believe.
Eventually, the cult will take over your
That's
faith.
right.
Exactly.
So, Mike, I know you've sponsored many, many, many individuals, right? And so I'm sure this was the first time you've come up against this.
It really is.
Really?
Really?
Yeah,
To this extent?
To this extent.
Oh, let's
yes.
hear about it a little
Yeah,
bit.
well,
How'd you deal with that?
He is totally brand new, because I'll tell you what. Number one, I'm an easy ask to be a sponsor
Yeah.
because of my relationship with the rehab.
Yeah.
And so I try not to do it too often. And quite honestly, I don't have great success. Because
None of us do.
Very true.
Because of the nature of the business.
The nature, yes. So they go on. But this is the first time that I've gone and gotten into the religious part of it. And I don't even like to use that word, the God thing.
Yeah.
And it's been a lesson to me, certainly, and it's opened my eyes. Number one, yes, just how much we do refer to God in the program and in the steps and all that we talk. And so it can be hard to make sure that somebody doesn't come in with the idea that it's all God. And if you don't believe, you're out.
Yeah.
And Jake has really taught me to be more open to that and let him have
Experience
his
it.
his beliefs and what have you, and experience it, in his time. Because I know, listen, I don't know if anybody was loaded with more contempt before investigation than I was. And so everything has taken a little time for me at the beginning to get used to and to digest and buy into. And admit that, yes, and accept that I was an alcoholic.
Well, the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking.
Exactly.
It's not that you have to believe in anything.
100%.
All we ask in step 2 is that you come to believe that a power greater than yourself.
Somebody other than you. Your decision
but we don't say you have to believe in a power greater than yourself. You have to believe that a power greater than yourself can.
Yes.
And then, then you have all the time in the world to work on step 3, and you can admittedly take step 3 without this full-on belief in a specific thing. All we're asking is that you make a decision that you're going to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand Him. Your understanding of God may be, there is no God really, but in the rooms I hear a cohesive spiritual message. That's what I'm taking as my higher power.
Exactly.
That's fine, and a lot of people do that. And it works. It works.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then over time, just like the steps, things evolve. I know every step that I've taken, all 12 steps, I've evolved over the course of sobriety, of practicing and repracticing and every day. And, things change. So we get a deeper understanding. And that was the design. They knew. These guys knew. This is going to be an issue.
Exactly.
It is amazing
They
how
weren't
these
stupid.
guys knew when
Yeah,
they wrote
it
this
is.
stuff and,
It
and
is.
put
It
this
really
all
is.
together. And the great thing is to point out, and again, at how we met. A God moment, a God coincidence. Something. How
It
did
was
we
something other than him and you that made you
Exactly.
two to come together.
at that meeting at that time, and then go from there afterwards. So,
And I believe in luck, right? Like, you can have a lucky streak when you're playing poker. That's not that hard for me to believe in, and that is a universal power, that there is not definable. And I considered myself incredibly lucky to have met Mike on that day, and then to have run into him at the next meeting, even though we weren't planning on going to that.
Right.
It felt like just super lucky, and that gives me solace that can be enough, and that if it does evolve to be more than that, great. If not, I do get a lot of value in having something that's not myself.
Right.
And that what I feel like is the most important, is getting out of self.
Right. And so now all of a sudden there's two people, right?
Yeah.
And so you guys have met. How does it work? How do you guys start to trust each other? How do you start to talk to each other? What happened with that?
You want to take
Magic?
Jake's going to have to expand on that because with me, it just trying to present this program in a gentle way. Again, the moment he asked me to be his temporary sponsor, and I said yes, the relief.
Yeah.
I could see, and he was just so relieved. And so I knew that I, of course, wanted to be gentle with any message.
Of course.
In welcoming him into the program and encouraging him, and keeping in mind that I wanted to keep his enthusiasm and not be overbearing.
And he did all those things.
And because he's got a career, he's got a family, kids,
But still keep him interested,
and
right?
still keep him interested.
Tricky.
And which he certainly was.
Yeah,
He
I
certainly
think
was.
he
was-
recognized that I had the gift of desperation, and I really wanted to do this. And so I didn't need somebody who was going to be pushing me to, do 90 and 90. And I was already committed that I wanted to do this. He just was there to make it softer.
So he was present.
Yeah, and he was present just as much as I needed him. So rather than scheduling phone calls on a daily basis, he was just reaching out,
Checking in.
checking in. Just he would send me a text, hey, how's your day going? And I'd respond. And so it really started with just a little bit of texting, and then some phone calls, but it wasn't so regimented. He let me kind of, as the scared puppy, kind of just slowly come out of the cage, and I think that was exactly what I needed.
Right now, just to be clear, did he keep you in a cage?
I was gonna
Yes.
Oh,
a physical
that's
cage.
the way the program works. Yeah,
Yeah. He put a collar on me. and
yeah. We
everything.
cage him. That's how we started.
Just like you do with the dog.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, that's been proven it works. So.
But one of the things I think that we had right from the very start was respect.
Yeah.
We really did. And we've clicked.
And I think that helps because you're both the same people, right? That helps a lot. Where for me, when I was in counseling and everything, I knew it was academic. It felt so academic. This person across me had no clue what it was truly like to suffer as an alcoholic. They knew academically what was going on, but to talk about those things that just, man, and so you guys know that you're both the same in that sense. So there's that already established.
And he showed a genuine interest in me without making assumptions.
Right.
I think it's common for us in
that's huge. Not making assumptions.
Yeah, in our patterns of expressing ourselves in meetings to tell our story, right? Keep it in the eye. And what I had found early on was that people really who were talking to me wanted to just tell their story to me and not ask a lot lot
of you,
of me,
right?
And not hear
Why are
my
you doing
story.
this,
They just wanted to, and that is important. It's important for people to hear it so they can relate. But he didn't make an assumption about me. He just genuinely showed an interest in me,
and decided we are going to move at his speed. Okay, not mine.
It's important
because I
too.
have much more time, free time on my hands than he does. Again, being in the job and kids. And one of the things that you had mentioned, and I know you were hellbound to do it, was the 90 and 90. And he really wanted to do that.
Is that right?
And so I had to let him know that it's okay if you don't hit it.
right?
Okay.
I was so glad that somebody told me that because I have the kids, I've got the job, right? I'm a scout, all this stuff. How in the world?
Exactly. And my whole recovery time, ever since I came in here at first, has been very easy with the job that I had, that I could go to meetings every night, and I didn't have outside influence, wife, kids, and all that. So I could go to meetings. I could make that 90-90, no problem. He can't, by work and kids and home and things like that. And I didn't want him to carry that pressure.
And at the same time, I think he recognized that I wasn't at the point where I was like slipping away, where I was like, what? I go to 7 meetings. Why don't I go to 6?
Right.
Why don't I go to 5?
Right.
He didn't completely let me do whatever I wanted to do. He just recognized I was on the end of pushing myself too hard, and so he didn't need to push me anymore. Maybe he needed to pull me back a little bit.
And let you know some freedom.
And I love
again,
that too, right? We
the
pull them
fun.
through, don't we?
Well,
Not push them through.
pull
We
them
help
through,
them come through.
help them come through, because it the whole experience certainly opens my eyes to this whole process of sponsoring, of helping somebody, okay? And I don't like to think of it in terms of sponsoring necessarily, but just helping
But
somebody.
you're not in charge of anyone.
Right, right.
No, I
right.
can't get anyone sober.
Exactly.
And the harder I
Exactly.
try to, the less it's going to be effective.
Exactly.
So a lot more carrot than stick, almost no stick. Once in a while, I'll get a sponsee who's blown off meetings, and I'll give him shit about it.
And I know a very specific way that you do it.
Yes,
and
I do.
love it.
I call them as Bill Wilson. They don't answer their phone. And I'll say, oh, hello, this is Bill Wilson calling. Dr. Bob and I were just wondering if you're still part of our program. We haven't been to any meetings lately. don't know where I get the accent from. I have heard
It's
Bill
close.
Wilson. I've had her speak on the old time.
He does kind of talk like
on the
that.
old time newsreels when
Yeah.
everybody seemed to talk like this,
Had a
and the
little bit of
world was
lisp.
black and white.
And now we're going.
But anyway, yeah. So the sponsor-sponsee relationship. I do know this: alcoholics in general do not like to be told what to do. That's just the way we are. Like, you tell me to do something, fuck you, I'll do the opposite.
With an attitude.
And it sometimes it works. I've heard people go, I remember they were like, you're never going to get sober. And then, fuck that, I came to meetings just to spite that motherfucker. And I'm like, yeah, well, whatever works,
Exactly.
But yeah, we don't like to be preached at. But we are we do respond well to people telling us how they did things successfully. Mm-hmm. Then we say, my God, it worked for him. Maybe I'll try that.
Yeah.
But if somebody tells you to do that, you're like, how about if I do my own way?
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are a screwed up bunch of people, aren't we?
Trying to figure out how to do this myself without you guys. Thanks for the tips, but
And then there are the people that just don't have a sponsor. And they say, I've never had a sponsor, and they don't drink, and they come to meetings. But in my opinion, they're missing a benefit that they could have.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And something Mike always says, it's just easier.
It is.
Yeah,
He
it
says
is.
it to me all the time. It really is easier.
life is just easier, clean, and sober.
Right.
If we were to do nothing else than not drink, that alone is going to make our life simpler. If we do it with the guidance of AA and the fellowship of a sponsor and other people in here, now it becomes fun.
So, getting into it a little more, have you guys started reading into the big book?
Yes.
We have.
Yes, we have.
And how has that worked out for you guys as far as making you closer? Has there been what's gone on with that?
I love it because most of the time we'll meet to go through a chapter, and within a couple of sentences we've already gone off on a tangent.
That's
and
right.
Now I'm telling my life story, and he is just sitting there enamored, listening and asking more questions about me. And what we went into this was to, read the chapter, turns out really being like this very intimate experience between the two of us where we're, able to, tell each other things. And it's not just me telling him like a therapist.
Right.
It's him telling his story to me and me genuinely being interested in it. And that I think is so much not better than the big book, but it's what has connected us more.
Well, the big book is a facilitator of that, isn't it?
Exactly.
It is. And, you said, you asked if going through the steps has brought us closer. I don't know if anything could bring us closer.
Right.
I mean, we just really have hit it off so well and have a great respect for each other and genuine love for each other.
Yeah. And if you break this down through history, like nothing worked, right? And so these two guys get together over coffee and they have a conversation and they talk about their mutual problem. And from that, they get something that's magic out of it. They don't have a big book. It hasn't been written yet. They're just one alcoholic talking to another, and they leave each other and like, holy shit, I didn't drink tonight.
Yeah.
Something is magical about it. The next day they talk. And all of a sudden they're like, this works. One alcoholic talking to another works. That's really the basis of the program.
Unbelievable.
We have the benefit of this guidebook that was written by the first 100 successful people that makes it easier for us. They were kind of just like, hey, I can't believe, it's like a discovery in the laboratory. They say that most great discoveries in laboratories are when people do something and they go, well, that's weird. They get right?
Yeah,
and then
seriously.
they try, oh, holy shit, this
Let's
actually
try
does.
this.
Right. So these guys talk and they're like, well, that worked.
Yeah.
And it still works to this day. And it is probably the most effective way to stay sober is one alcoholic talking to another.
According to Stanford, it is.
Yeah.
Just saying.
And honestly, I thought that meant that we needed to, have the same story or be very similar people. And we have such different stories and such different experiences. And we are very different in a lot of ways. That part isn't as important. We do have the one thing that connects us, which is we are both alcoholics.
Thank God.
Yeah.
right,
Just
I
saying,
guess.
kind of.
Just saying.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things that he's told me from his experiences that I could never imagine going through, and I think vice versa. And that part of it is really I thought was supposed to be more important. You know, when I had asked people who should I pick to be my sponsor. Somebody told me, oh, well, you shouldn't, pick an old timer. Like, you got to pick somebody a little bit closer to your age, because what are you going to connect on? And, for those of us who don't know, we are not exactly in the same generation.
Right.
We have very different upbringings. As we had mentioned before, he was raised Catholic, I was not, but those things don't matter. We just connect as two human beings. Who
With
both
a
happen
common
to be
malady.
Yeah, you're sharing
alcoholics.
a common problem, and now you're sharing a common solution.
Exactly.
And know this language of recovery, because it truly is a different language that we use in this room, in these rooms with recovery. It just is.
Now, have we butt heads?
Yeah. He hates my haircut.
All right, well, there's one thing.
So let's expand on that.
I don't hate his hair.
This is a very recent resentment.
There is no step for a haircut, as far as I know.
Yeah, he made a comment on my haircut on Thursday night, and I still haven't let it go.
Oh, he's testing you. That's all. He's seeing what you've learned and how you're able to come through it.
Yeah. He's just trying to find my button so he knows which ones to press.
I found one. I found one.
God, that's so good. Anything else?
But
No,
No.
not necessarily. Not that we butt heads on.
Mm-hmm.
No, he's so open and
Yes.
just like willing to just meet me where I'm at and then go
So
go
foreign,
from there.
isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Just to have somebody, and that I think is the characteristic that I needed the most. It is really somebody who's just going to calm me down a little
Yeah.
bit and be like, it's okay, and come with me. I tell this to my family members, the people I'm close with, when they ask me about my sponsor. He reminds me a lot of my best friend, who is somebody who would just go to the end of the world for you, no matter what. Who is just the nicest, sweetest human being who you could introduce to anybody, and they immediately will love them. And that, to me, it was like, if I see my best friend in this person, I know that is somebody who's going to be
And it's also
right for
partly
me.
who you really are, and we just haven't discovered it yet.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things we find in this program is, we've lost who we truly are, that good human, that good person right deep down inside.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a hard time finding it, and we have the hardest time is when we see it in somebody, right? But as you talk to them, it comes out a little more and a little more. And I know this of you because you just helped somebody recently. You don't know how much you did, but you did, right? So you were that person right there. So, I just wanted to bring that up, but it is different. It is different to be around somebody like that, but that's what we become as
Yeah.
a result of this. Now, I'm sure you weren't always the wonderful, sweet individual that was open to anybody's problems and stuff.
I don't know when.
I've always been really, really cool.
Yeah, I've always been very easy to get along with. But there was one particular time when we got together and you were all wound up against, again, about a line in the book that had you all worked up.
The rule is we must be hard on ourselves. No, we must be easy to others, but hard on ourselves. Something like that.
Something like that. And
Something
again,
I took out of context, of
yeah,
course.
and that he was pretty worked up about this. And when I explained to him the meaning of that,
Yeah.
again, to see, again, the pressure just release. And so these little things, although they seemed little at the time, were very significant to me because it meant that I was having an effect. I was helping. only to the point that I want him to, again, enjoy this thing. And to be able to do that and bring that out in somebody and see the relief is huge.
Yeah,
It's
And it's especially important what you do, because sometimes in the rooms we hear a lot of contradictory things.
Yes.
Don't make any big changes in your first year. Have you seen step 3? Right? I mean, don't make any decisions in the first year. All these silly things that we hear in the rooms that don't necessarily coincide with what we're learning.
Well,
in the book.
the signs, the 5 little placards up front.
Yeah.
Think. And then they say, don't think, don't drink, go to meetings. Like, I'll pick one.
Yeah.
I can't do both of those.
I know.
And I remember asking my sponsor about that. I'm like, what is this?
Right.
There's a lot of poetry in the literature, right, which
Yeah.
takes interpretation. And when I originally went through the big book, I did it on my own, and I was told at a meeting by Mike A, who I think has been on this podcast.
Yeah.
That the one thing I heard you say was that you were reading the big book, and then I heard you were reading it alone, and I wanted to hit you. and so it because it does require interpretation, and all those contradicting things that you hear at meetings, you can also read a lot of contradicting things in the big book, and that is exactly what I was getting worked up about. Was certain lines, things that felt, like they were the antithesis of the
We're
program.
very analytical beings,
Well, yeah. And Mike, what he was able to do was help filter all of that.
Yes.
And guide me into something that was going to take away that anxiety. And ultimately, after I kept getting more and more worked up, and I would come to Mike, and he would say something that just took the relief away. I made the decision that I was just going to listen to Mike.
There it is.
I'm going to hear contradicting things in this meeting.
It's one of your big acts of humility.
But I can only take in so much when I'm so fresh and I don't know what to think and believe. If I'm confused about something, I'm going to bring it to him and let him filter it for me. And he's pretty damn good at it.
Yeah, that's wise. Another thing too is somebody will bring something up at a meeting, they say, do you have a step, a tradition, a life problem?
right.
And a lot of people will say you need to talk to your sponsor about it. So,
Right.
so for you, what does that look like?
So, what does it look like to
Yeah,
bring...
like if you got an issue and you're thinking about it, are you like, you know what? Let me run this by my sponsor.
He calls me at 2:00 in the morning.
That's exactly. I was going to say the most extreme
There was
example.
something recent, wasn't there?
Yeah. So there was something that was said at a meeting that really rubbed me the wrong way. It hit something in me. I thought he was speaking to me.
Oh, I remember this one.
Yeah, and it was a little old school, and it kind of put me down. And
Go ahead and say what it was. Do you remember?
you take the cotton out of your ears, put it in your mouth, basically. And this was said, right after I had shared, and basically insinuating that I should sit down and shut up, that I don't know anything. And I really felt so awful about that, because at this point in my recovery, sharing in meetings was so cathartic for me. It was so I needed it.
And you learned from it.
Yeah, and I learned from it, and I felt like after that I wasn't able to share openly in meetings, because I was being judged by the people around me, and that I was, thinking I knew more than I knew, and all of these negative things. And it really struck me the wrong way. And after that meeting, I turned to Mike and I said, I want to go drink.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how worked up and upset I was. And, he calmed me down a little bit, but ultimately I continued to get worked up throughout the next couple days, to the point where I was in my kitchen at 2:00 in the morning, pacing back and forth like a madman, like arguing in my head why it's stupid that you say something like that, why that's not what the program is about, and
That's not going to help me.
yeah, that's not going to help me, and how dare you, and I just wanted to do all the bad things to this person who had said this.
Throw a chair at him.
Throw a chair at him, tell him.
Right, and then you waffle between that and self-doubt. Maybe they're right.
Yeah.
That's a bad place to be in your head.
Oh,
Because
God.
I do it. I still do it.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And
they're
right,
right.
and you need to bounce it off somebody, and they're going to go, you know what? It's not that big of a deal. Sometimes it's as simple as, I've heard this person say this before. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Don't worry about it.
Yes.
Or that's true for some people, and he wasn't talking to you.
Yes.
Because there are people that come in that are new that kind of overshare, and they speak like they've been through the stops. And I always just kind of keep my mouth shut and go, well, they'll figure it out.
Right.
I don't need to tell them that.
Well, that is kind of exciting being new to have some solutions to offer, right?
Yeah.
But I get it, Oh, I saw him. He was thinking at me, right? And that just gets you to the core.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, they probably aren't, but that's our own thing.
Exactly. And I at that moment, that was the peak of
Yeah.
like how distraught I was. And I had been distraught before, obviously, in my life, and I had always had alcohol to turn to. And at this point, at 2:00 in the morning, I didn't have alcohol, but I did have Mike's phone number.
Yeah.
And I called him, and he answered on the first ring, and he, talked to me. He mostly actually listened
Yeah.
and just said, let it out, let me cry.
Yeah.
And then he said, like, you're good at giving advice to people. What would you say to somebody who's going through what you're going through right now?
Nice.
And that was like the turning point. I started to give some advice. I took some deep breaths. I calmed down, and I was able to go to bed finally.
And I was up for the rest of the night.
Well, here's the problem.
But loved
a
it.
lot of times in early
course you did.
sobriety is we've survived on egoic thinking for so long that's our go-to.
That's how we did survive.
Yeah, and so our ego gets dinged. Wow, that puts us right into that
Yeah.
fucking mode where we are pissed and we are hurt and we feel we're not good enough maybe,
Need
or maybe
revenge.
they're an asshole, we're being attacked,
Yes.
or blah, 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 and all these egoic thoughts are going through our head. And then we talk to somebody who says, you know what? It is better to be it's better to understand than to be understood. Or they walk us through the spiritual side of thinking through an issue and taking the ego out of it. Once you take the ego out of it, you're like, oh, well, maybe that's the way they feel, but that's not how I feel about myself. And it's as simple as that.
Talking about selves, half the problem.
People talk about pole vaulting over mouse shit. We
I
all do
love
it.
that.
We all do it, And it's all
Right?
ego-based.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
slowly
Oh,
we
God.
learn this way of the second and third step. And it works. And like Mike always says, it's just easier. In your mind, it's just easier. We don't get there immediately. I don't. When my ego gets stung, my first response is, boom, I want to hit back.
Yeah.
And then I want to feel bad for myself and all that
I've been
shit.
mightily bruised by it, by the way.
I know, Jesus, I'm sorry, Brett. I got to make amends to Brett
Oh,
right now.
no, he does not,
Some cruel
trust me.
stuff I've said.
Oh, God.
But then eventually I get there, and I'll get there quicker if I talk to somebody,
Yeah.
Because that's the answer. And they say, wear life like a loose garment,
I love that, too.
God.
Right. And my thing was always,
hated that.
listen, here's what I've said. What if it gets snagged on something? It's loose.
So these couple days that I had gone through this, Mike wasn't the only person I reached out to. I mean, he was the most important person. He's the person I reach out to the most. But it didn't just take one conversation to get through this rough patch. I had gone to Brett after a
We
meeting.
sat in the truck for a while.
Yeah. And I had heard things like wear life like a loose garment. Or,
I did not say that.
No, you did not. Or
Nothing's loose on me.
Cool your jets, man. It's gonna be fine. Basically all insinuations of stop being so anxious. And it's like, when you're feeling anxious, like that's just so hard to hear. You're like, yeah, I would love to not feel this way. I would love to not feel this way. But
Right. I don't know how.
I don't know how.
Help me not feel this way.
Help me. And I had heard people tell me, oh, he wasn't speaking to you. or he's like that. You just don't know him.
And some people love to have that. Right? It's all they got to hang on to is say that.
And those things were important to hear, but in my head, I still believed like that I had done something wrong, and my ego was still bruised, and I just needed somebody to show me love, empathy, and compassion that I didn't have for myself.
Right, and here's the long-term value of that. You experienced that, and next time it pops up, you'll go, I remember feeling this way before.
Yeah.
And here's what worked.
Yeah.
And you may not do it right that time, but over the course of time, you start to learn what works and what doesn't work for you. And so we learn this new design for living that we were never taught, and we would have never found if we didn't come into this program. And that's when they say life beyond your wildest dreams, that's what they're talking about.
Exactly. The comfortability.
We're done fighting it all.
Exactly. To be in here and know the peace and the serenity.
Just to be comfortable in your own skin. That's why we drank. We weren't comfortable in our own skin. In order to take away that desire, we have to have some level of comfortability in our own skin, or we will seek relief in a drug or a drink, right?
Right.
Exactly.
And then when it really hits is when you're in that moment, that moment of real distress, because it almost feels more despairing that you're not there. You haven't gotten the promises, that you're still feeling this way. Mm-hmm. And there isn't much you can tell somebody to make them believe that it will be easier. It will be softer. These promises will come true. You just need to give it time, because time is our enemy in that moment.
That and stories, right? Stories of how Mike, myself, or Mark got through.
Right.
Those
It's not
things.
like I can't tell you how to do this,
right, but here's
what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you take from it what you will.
When it happened to me, and this is what I learned to do.
And the more people you talk to, the more different angles you get on it, until you kind of cobble together your own try. And maybe your try is 50% successful, but that's a lot,
progress.
Yeah.
And so over the course of time, and you get these things, and then you'll find yourself talking to somebody on the other end of it and going, holy shit, I've experienced this, and here's what I did, and all of a sudden you're sharing your story with someone else. That's the way it works.
Yeah. So we're moving forward, right? We're still moving forward in the program, right?
Yes, faster and more furious than ever.
Nice.
I'm taking my time before step 4.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I've never heard that before. You'll get there. But so overall, this experience thus far, having a sponsor, right, going through it, having somebody that you can trust, having somebody that you feel is genuinely there for you, how would you rate it?
10 out of 10.
Okay. There you go. There's some feedback for you.
Not 12 out of 10.
Oh, see?
No, because the haircut thing.
Shit. That cost you 2 stars, dude.
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, now you should look forward to step 4 so you can bring that up.
Yeah. Any kind of resentment. Yeah. Well, we are at the end of our time, but
whiz.
this has been a really good conversation.
I'll tell you.
We got to do more of this kind of thing.
Yeah, if you guys like this and you're listening, and you like this, or it was impactful for you, let us know, because this was just an idea, something to do a little different, and boy, am I glad we did.
Yeah.
We've got 2 great guys here that are doing some great work.
We want to thank you guys for coming on and sharing with us.
Thanks for having us.
Really appreciate it.
Until next time on the Glumlot Podcast, I'm Mark.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Mike.
I'm Jake.
As we wrap up another episode of the Glumlot Podcast, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you who tuned in today. Navigating the path to recovery from alcohol and other substances is a journey filled with challenges, triumphs, and self-discovery. Remember, we're not affiliated with Alcoholics Anonymous, but we're here to provide a safe space for open conversations about the complexities of recovery. Your stories, courage, and resilience inspire us and our listeners alike. If you or someone you know is on the transformative journey, know that you're not alone. Join us next time as we continue to explore the diverse facets of recovery. Until then, stay strong, stay connected, and remember that each day is a step towards a brighter, sober tomorrow. Thank you for being part of the Glumlot community.